Americans owe more than $1 trillion in credit card debt, up 60% from just 5 years ago. Meantime, higher interest rates make debt even more difficult to pay off. It's a downward spiral, causing credit card delinquencies to surge. Our economics correspondent Paul Solman explains.
For 35-year-old Helena Emanalo, it started innocently enough.
My mother had to move in with us. At the time, it was my husband and I. We had a little baby, and then we had another baby on the way. The amount of people in our house almost tripled in a very short time span, and expenses tripled as well.
To meet them, like so many other Americans these days, she turned to credit cards.
It's very easy to swipe, and this is an emergency, and everything can be an emergency right now.
Before she knew it,
I accumulated about $20,000 in debt.
Compared to one estimate of average household debt nationwide, about $10,000. But it's the most indebted, like Emanalo, who've driven credit card delinquencies to their highest rate in 15 years. Bankruptcies up 12% in the last year alone.
Once you start adding all of that up, well, you realize you don't have enough money for daycare, or you don't have enough money to pay your electric bill. And then all of a sudden, things just get unmanageable very, very quickly.
People talk about a debt spiral. That sound familiar?
It does. Yeah, it does. I kind of found myself in an endless cycle of just trying to pay something, even though it wasn't making a dent in the overall amount that I owed.
And it's not just millennials and older generation members like Emanalo now caught up in the debt interest whirlpool.
It's a huge problem, and it's a specifically huge problem for young people.
Personal finance guru Beth Kobliner first published Get a Financial Life for Young People, now in its 5th edition, 30 years ago. The early life debt dilemma since? Worse than ever.
We've seen the rate of credit card debt for young people go up about 190% since 2020.
And student debt now near $2 trillion.
Last I checked, it was approximately 17,000.
25-year-old Bridget Klinger.
A lot of what I earn immediately goes to trying to pay off all of this debt every month.
Gen Z has more debt than any other generation in history before it.
Let's talk about how much credit card debt I have, and spoiler alert, it is a lot.
Hey, is there any other 18-year-olds with like $6,000 in credit card debt?
And there's a new debt trap for the young, says Kobliner.
Buy now, pay later is one more example of what we're calling frictionless finance, which may sound great, but it's actually quite pernicious. In general, getting further and further away from knowing how much we're spending, and sometimes we don't even realize when we're spending. In the last decade, we literally have changed the way we've made purchases. We no longer take out our wallet, use cash, and count out the dollar bills. Nobody does that anymore.
Not Helena Emanalo.
I was doing a lot of buy now, pay later. And when it came time to pay, I was like, oof, I don't have it.
And when that happens,
they say they won't charge you interest. But the problem is, if you're late, you're going to be hit with a big fee.
Bottom line, as Kobliner has stressed for decades, if you borrow young, you dig yourself a hole.
With my student debt, my husband's student debt, our car loans, credit cards, it's probably like the amount of a mortgage, like an amount of a current mortgage, like $125,000, $150,000.
So folks like Marjorie San Pietro use credit cards. Their interest rates hitched to credit scores.
Our average credit card rate is about 30%, and that seems frustrating to me. It's kind of predatory.
30%, which implies a pretty low credit score. And says Emanalo,
if you don't have a good credit score, you can't buy a house, you can't buy a car.
Loan defaults, bankruptcies, and yet another grim economic statistic setting records these days, low consumer sentiment. Now, President Trump economic advisor Kevin Hassett dismisses its significance.
I actually think that we should stop calling it consumer sentiment and start calling it political sentiment, because the variables it's really a political variable, not an economic variable.
And yes, says Joanne Shu, who runs the Consumer Sentiment Survey, the results have been a reflection of which party is in power. But recently,
Republicans actually have been showing declining sentiment this year as well. And the current reading from May shows both Republicans and independents at their lowest level since the beginning of 2025. People across the political spectrum, they have been feeling less optimistic about the economy over the course of this year.
and come on, says economist Mark Zandi, the reason is obvious for so many Americans.
If you look at real disposable income, that's after inflation, after taxes, it's lower today than it was a year ago. And that's that's economy wide, right? So that means that, stands to reason about half the population is experiencing outright decline. And so if you've been spending in a certain way for a long time and your income starts to erode, how do you respond to that?
Which brings us back to the subject of this story, consumer debt.
Many people turn to leverage and credit, and the credit card being the best example of that, to help tide things over. But then you get nailed with higher interest rates. Now you're paying 20% interest on whatever you borrowed, and that's very, very difficult to get out of.
And deeper you may sink. One final point. In an increasingly K-shaped economy, who's doing the lending?
The folks in the top part of the distribution, the well-to-do, they own lots of things. They have big deposits at banks. They own bonds and stocks. And those deposits and those savings go to providing the credit that folks in the bottom part of the income distribution, the middle part of the distribution, are using to finance their spending on autos and on a home and other things.
There's an old saw in economics. It's not how much you borrow, but what you do with the money. If you can afford to invest the money, great. But if you can't, and have to borrow to survive, you may find yourself, like so many of our fellow Americans, sucked under. For the PBS News Hour, Paul Solman.